Hi, welcome back to You Can Homeschool. I'm Tracey Hagerman, also known as the Happy Homeschooler, and I'm here once again with the lovely Pat Fenner from Breakthrough Homeschooling. And our topic this week has to do with how and why to get your children to own their learning. Okay, what are you talking about? Own your learning. What does that even mean? Well, I'm not sure if Pat has the same definition because we usually don't talk before our podcast. But for me, one of the things that was one of the big goals in our homeschooling philosophy was to get each one of my children to a point that they became self learners. And so this is the goal, so that in life, as they go on to other studies, or they go on to trades, or whatever they decide to do in life, that they are able to take responsibility for their lives and themselves and their ongoing learning. Because isn't life just a whole ongoing learning as our lives change and develop over time? So this was a huge thing for us. And so um, in the younger ages, it could be things as simple as when they got up in the morning, they had a little list of things they had to do before school started. So they each had a little checklist on their door. That's what worked for my kids.
I love it.
And they'd go look at their checklist, and they'd say, oh yeah, I have to get dressed and I have to make my bed, and I need to come and eat breakfast, and I need to put my dishes in the dishwasher, and that kind of thing. And so they'd come and they'd sit down and say, okay, I'm ready for school. And we usually start with Bible study. And I would say, did you get everything you needed done before we start? And they'd go, let me go check my list. So that was in the younger years. Some of the things that we did to get them to just like own part of the day. So how about you, Pat? When they were really young, what would you do?
Yeah, we did stuff like that. Oh gosh, we went through so many different permutations when I had the two older ones. We actually had a schedule. It was a pre, put together product that you bought and then kind of customized, and it had 15-minute increments. And so, you had like, 9 to 9:15, wake up, 9:15 to 9:30, brush your teeth, wash your face, whatever. I mean, it got really, really, you know, like just they were really, oh my gosh, I can't think of what it was.
Detailed, or
Yes. They got really detailed in what it was. And but the problem with that was that, you fall short in one area, or it took too long in one area, and then you were messed up for like the rest of the day. So that didn't work too long, but we did find we had lists. I really encouraged my kids, even from when they were little, we had paper and pen um, with the little kids, because it was part of like a writing thing. And Sunday we would do the schedule, and that was part of, handwriting lesson or whatever. And then as they got older, I just bought them, like middle school, I started buying them like actual books, calendar books or something like that, that they could use. And they really started taking ownership of it for themselves. I remember my oldest daughter, when she went to college, she came home one time and my younger daughter was flipping through, just her stuff. She wanted to see what her big sister was doing. And Lauren had this planner that was color coded by subject, when things were due, and there were different colors and activities. She was very involved in a lot of extracurricular stuff too. And it looked like you open it up, it's like, whoa, 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 I need glasses. It was the rainbow, but it worked for her. I mean, for me, it was a little too much, but yeah, she took it and she owned her learning. And I just wanted to go back for a second too, Tracey. What you were talking about is, how you define owning. And I'm so with you on that. And you hear me talk about the lifestyle of learning all the time. And I do agree that, life is just one big learning curve. You're always learning stuff. And if you don't take ownership of that for yourself, that this is my life, my learning curve, whether it's my job or just something I need to do to help the home run smoothly, whatever the reason is that you have to learn something, uh, taking ownership of it means you don't expect someone to spoon feed you. And that was one of the biggest frustrations I had with the public school system. And I apologize ahead of time if this sounds like I'm bashing, but it's just that just the way the system is, because you have so many kids, you really, it's hard to encourage people to take ownership, because you have to keep track of all these kids. You have to get these 30 kids through that curriculum for that year or whatever. And so you're constantly, as a teacher, doling out, this is what you need to learn this week, this is what you need to learn this week, and so the result is that there's no ownership. It's like, well, I don't need to know that. Teacher didn't tell me I needed to own that. I didn't need to learn that. And taking ownership means I know what I need, what I have, the challenge I have before me, and no one is going to show me how to do this. It's up to me to figure this out, and I can do it. And then you go ahead and do it.
That makes so much sense. You were talking about the, public school, how they're like spoon feeding or, and I mean, the teachers have to do that with the number of kids
Yeah.
in the class.
Yeah.
But I was thinking in this taking ownership, it's part of the philosophy is that our children don't feel like, okay, mom wants me to learn this, or it's school time now. Oh, I got to do this. It feels like a chore. It feels like I'll have to do something. And then I can get back to real life once this is done,
Right.
or the fun stuff. And it's turning that around and saying, so let me give you the example of reading. So I've said this many times, but I really believe that there's three things that if your children learn to do well, they can basically learn anything. And that is reading, writing, and math. But let's take reading as the example. So we would spend a lot of time reading aloud to our kids, and that went on right through the preteens, teens. We were always reading, or we'd move to audiobooks or whatever. So they were always immersed in material that was often beyond their level.
Mm-hmm.
And but the thing this did when they were younger and they were, learning vocabulary and enjoying their own little books is that when we would read books a grade above their grade level and read them aloud, it stirred a desire for them in them to learn to read better so that they didn't have to wait for mom to read it to them. They didn't have to wait while mom finished the laundry or whatever so that they could read this book they really wanted to read. And so one of the things we did is we would read chapter books, and we would read a chapter a day. And my husband would often read a chapter either when he first got home from work or later on at bedtime as part of the bedtime routine. So they were always so anxious for him to read, more than one chapter, and would beg him to read, please go on to the next chapter. I can't wait to hear what happens. But I found that this constant reading and reading aloud, that was so much a part of our homeschooling. It was a huge priority in our homeschooling. It really did build that desire for them to want to love books and to want to read at a higher level. Mm-hmm. So they were happy to do the work required to get beyond where they were in their reading. And right. Again, it's that spurring it, that inner love of the learning rather than being force fed. You got to do this.
Right. Absolutely. And just, I know that can be kind of a foreign concept to parents these days with all the lure of technology. And I would encourage you to try, even if you can set aside only, an hour a week, an hour a day or something to encourage your kids. And I don't know, make it a competitive thing, have them keep track of pages read or books read or whatever. And then, at the end of the month, like have a family, party and awards or whatever, like if you have to make it competitive or whatever, like that, do whatever it takes to encourage your kids, make popcorn, say, this is only for reading time or something, or have some snacks that are only for reading time. Model it. You do it too. Read with them. So even if you're reading different things, say, oh, listen to this. I just read this, and encourage sharing. What are you reading about right now? What's the topic, or what's your favorite character in that book or whatever, which also then encourages conversation as well. And which is also a good skill for kids to have rather than just texting all the time. So, there are a lot of ways that you can motivate your kids to read, because it is hard right now, the lure of technology. And I know there's a lot of you moms listening to this that are addicted. There are times that I find myself playing a game or whatever, thinking, oh gosh, I need to be doing something else, and just there is a lure. So we have to be diligent for ourselves too, as well as for our kids, to get back in the books. Oh, I mean, I love books.
Yeah. And, a lot of people, and I don't know if it's true for the younger generation, but I hear for a lot of people, even though they'll read a lot digitally, on their phone, you can get all ebooks and that. I hear a lot of people, because I'm a fiction author, and I hear people saying they just love that book in their hands, that they can go cozy up in a corner somewhere and just take that book and make it their own, So the thing to add to that is to instill that love of books, is also to just have areas in your house for reading. So we would go to the library easily every 2 to 3 weeks, take out about 75 books, no word of a lie. And I would just have them all over the house. And also, in their rooms, they would have like a cozy chair or a cozy spot for the books. And because we were changing up the books all the time, it was always something novel coming into the house that they were, interested in. So books will go so far to help your kids love that, gain that learning. Because even if it's a children's book, and I don't know, maybe it's a book about rockets or something, I know with my son, we'd read something like that, and the next thing he wanted to do was go research more about rockets because something in the book had spurred that on. So again, it's bringing that desire, but reading and books will so feed that desire to learn more.
Absolutely. And also encourage them, I mean, keeping with the topic of owning, their learning. When we went to the library, we were like that too. We were on a first name basis with the librarians. When they moved on, we missed them. And, what library did they go to? All that kind of stuff. But we would, I'd always, of course, allow the kids, they picked whatever they wanted. But I'd look for a book or two for me. I didn't nearly have the same amount of time they would have. So I couldn't, for me, bring home a lot, but I'd always make sure I brought home one or two for me. And then I'd look for other things for them, not tell them what I was looking for, and just try to, because it was a way to kind of broaden, because they kind of got hooked on different sections of the library. So I'd go to a different one and see if I get a couple of books. Don't make a big deal about it, and then just leave those around, as Tracey was describing. And whether it was on the couch, we have a really comfy couch and a lot of soft blankets. It's really wonderful. You can easily get 3 or 4 people on our couch, and they're not touching each other, because how kids are. Yeah, to read. And so we would do that. I would do that. I would just try to broaden their scope. And the interesting thing on that too is you never know what's going to appeal to them. Like, I had a friend who brought home a book. I don't remember what the topic was, but it was illustrated. It wasn't pictures. It was hand drawn, and it got her son started on drawing. The book wasn't about drawing, but he loved the illustrations, and he wanted to learn how to do that. And then I have a friend who had a daughter who that happened to, similar thing, that she ran with the illustrating. She's so talented, but that's how she discovered it. Her mom had gotten a book. Don't remember again the topic, but her daughter liked the illustrations, so she's like, oh, I could do that. And so she started copying that, and who knew, so you just never know where that's going to where that's going to lead to as well.
Oh, love that so much.
Yeah.
On that note, I was thinking about the other thing to help your children own their learning is to give them choices. And so by this, I mean, let's say you read a book and, you're thinking the assignment is some kind of book report or something. Well, give your child the choice. Maybe they want to research and write an essay on a topic that was in that book, just one little piece of the book. Maybe that's something they want to do. Or maybe they get to the end of the book and when you say, okay, well, how about you write a chapter telling what happened after the end of the book. So let's say, okay, the book ended, but what if this character had decided to go do something else? What would that something else be? And what would be the next chapter? So, your creative kids who, are like, oh yeah, I'd like to do this. Or you could tell them like, okay, they made a choice in this chapter to do something. Would you have made the same choice And if not, what would your choice be? Write about that. So again, it's giving them options. And I know that I would give my youngest daughter options, and she would always come up with, even though I'd give her like 5 different options of things she could do, as long as it was writing, practicing her writing, she would come up with a 6th option invariably. She doesn't really like being told what to do, but she would say, well, what if I wrote a play based on the book? And I'd go, sure, why not? And she's like, and then can I get, my siblings to be part of the characters and get costumes and whatever? And I said, sure, why not? But again, instead of me telling her, you have to do this writing project, she had come up with something that appealed to her, which was going to meet the same ends by her improving on her writing and being able to, communicate through a play. Right. So again, give your children choices where you can in their learning, and you'll just find that they'll be more motivated to take on the work and the learning.
Yeah. And for those of you who, I have a very recent story to share on that. For those of you who have younger kids, I want to give you a little inspiration for the future. I have one of our son just graduated from college. Okay. So, and the point of this story is that you just never know how this is going to play out in their future. So he graduated from college. He's got a psychology degree. He believes he wants to go into a branch of psychology, IO. Look it up. I don't get it. IO psychology. And he does know he's going to need a master's and probably a doctorate for that. So he's got a couple of years ahead of him. He's always been interested in theater. He's always wanted to do theater. I think he's phenomenal. I know I'm a mom, but I still think he's really talented. He got a lot of accolades when he was in high school and doing all this, and he kind of put it aside in college because he was encouraged by other adults in his life to, come on, it's time to get serious. You can't do that. But he's always got this. He loved it. His personality just transformed when he was on stage. He was amazing. And but he put it aside, and everything. But he said to me recently, he's like, Mom, he's having trouble narrowing down a graduate school to go to. Not narrowing down, he's having trouble finding. I mean, that's big picture. He said, I just keep thinking about, I just really wanted to try acting and I never did. Now he's 2 years ahead of where he would have been if he'd gone to traditional school because of homeschooling and doing dual enrollment and stuff. So he went started college with some extra credits too and stuff. So he's young still. And he said to me the other day, he said, I think it's because I just don't know if I really want to do this psychology thing. And I just don't know what would have happened if I tried it. And I said, honey, this is the time to do it. I said, this is your life. This is your future. And you're going to incur a lot of expense and debt going right into school if you're not even though you might not be ready for it or sold on it. So he's kind of taken ownership of this, and he started looking at ways that he can either do a summer internship or, do something that's theater related. And he's so energized. He's just so renewed and excited about this discovery for himself and learning how to get plugged in and all this stuff. He said, it may turn out to be nothing, and that's fine, but then I won't live the rest of my life thinking, what if? And I'm so proud of that he's just gone beyond what he feels like he should do or what people are telling him to do. And he is doing this on his own, and he's taking ownership. It's not only now of his learning, he's taking ownership of his life. It's really morphed into that.
And that's the whole goal, right? For them to take ownership of their lives and to realize that if they take a certain risk, okay, might work out, might not, but that risk is worth taking for me. Right. It's not mom and dad saying, go, you have to go do this, or go, you have to do that. They have their own, he's excited about it. And I think that's what makes, I just want to say, like, motivated young adults. I'm thinking of my youngest daughter who's just graduated university, and our children knew that they were paying for their higher education themselves. And so she's just graduated and has walked out debt-free, but there was some summer she was working 2 jobs and working more than full-time hours to put her money away. But she just recently landed her first job. She did a whole budget because she's going to be moving away from home for this job. And the job that she's landed is a 6-month contract. So she doesn't know if it's going to get extended, but she says, even if I move away to do this job, I know I can get another job if it doesn't go further than that. And so she's motivated and she's willing to take that risk. She feels the confidence in able to do that because she's been working towards this for a long time and owning her school, owning her life choice. And I'm just so proud of her that she's like, don't worry, mom. Because I'm like, what if it doesn't get extended and you have to sign a year lease? And she says, I know that if that happens, I could get any job and I could still pay my rent. I figured it all out and I'll be okay. And I'm just so proud of her to take that on. But that didn't start now. That started way back at 15. She wanted a job because her 2 older siblings had a job. And I'm like, you're only 15. You don't need to have a job. I want a job. Got herself her first job at McDonald's and then, worked from there, worked really hard to put her money away for school and stuff. So, but again, she owned it. And part of that was also teaching them, budgeting and stuff. Cause I remember the first time she got her paycheck, she was all excited with her paycheck. And I happened to be going to the grocery store and she was with me. And the amount that we were paying for groceries was about the amount of her first paycheck. And she looked at the couple of bags and went, that's all it gets. That's my whole first paycheck. And it showed her right then and there that, yes, she had worked all these hours, but this is what it had produced. So right then and there, she started making a budget, figuring out what she was spending on. So again, it doesn't, all these things, you want to start them early, just getting them to own their work, own the chores that they're responsible in the house. And I was just going to mention that another thing that I think is really important in helping your kids own their work is, like you were talking about your daughter with the agenda and all the, highlighters. And that my 2 daughters are like that. The highlight, like, too busy for me, but that worked for them. But again, they each did have their own agenda and they would sit and figure out their week. It's like they kind of knew what they had to do, but it was like, and at first it was me sitting with them saying, okay, we have to do math and reading in this. Where's this going to fit in the days in this week? But after a while, they were the ones slotting it in. So an agenda is a really good idea for your kids, just so they can see. And they also see like, oh, check, that's done. I can go do something else now.
Right. Oh, there's such satisfaction with that, checking it off. I'll add things on my planner just to check them off. Oh gosh. Yeah. So anyway, yeah. So that's really, I think, which I just want to reiterate, one of the things Tracey said about starting early is it's so true. Like, give your kids as many choices as you can, as early as you can. I mean, don't sweat about what they're going to wear and things like that. And because the more ownership they take of their own, which is, I guess you could also word it as taking responsibility for themselves, although responsibility sometimes comes, there's such negative connotations with that, it just feels like a weight, but taking ownership should be very empowering to them. And you, like Tracey said, you do want to empower them for their future. That's what you want to do. Think of having a 35-year-old living at home asking you, well, I don't know what to do today. Oh, honey, get it together, And it does start early, and it starts with little pieces that you can give them responsibility for, that they can take ownership of, and morph it into the learning process. That's such a privilege that we have as homeschoolers, that we can take that ownership concept, apply it to their learning, which then is something that becomes even broader as they grow up. It's such an organic process that many people don't have who undertake the more traditional forms of education.
Mm-hmm. And I also want to add to that we sort of had this kind of unwritten rule that my kids quickly came to realize what I was doing because they'd call me out on it. But if they were grumbling or complaining about something wasn't working or they were frustrated with something or that, I'd always be like, okay, you have a valid complaint, but let's not just complain to complain. What can we do to solve this? What will make a difference? So if, they're complaining about the math is too difficult or whatever. Okay, well, maybe we're going too fast. Like, what can we do to make it easier? Or, I always like to tackle the more difficult things in the morning and get them out of the way. My youngest daughter is not a morning person, so her brain is not quite functioning yet. So she wanted to tackle the subjects that she had more difficulty with in the afternoons. And so we had to switch things around. And that's what she said. And I'd be like, oh, you'd always hear these books about do the hard things first and then it gets easier. But that didn't necessarily work for her. And when she was saying, no, I don't want to do the writing in the morning, like writing is difficult for me. I want to do it later. I had to listen to her and let her switch that to later. And it worked. So that thing where they called me out, that when they'd ask me a question, I'm like, oh, I have physics and chemistry to do, and I've got, my job to do, and I'm feeling stressed or overwhelmed or whatever. And they'd tell me that, I'd say, okay, so what do you want to do about it? And they're like, Mom, why do you always make it into a question? Okay, you got me. But again, I was giving it back to them saying, okay, you've identified the problem. What are the potential solutions?
Right.
And for my son, one of his solutions was, I'm just going to spend all day on Mondays doing math. And he would. And he wouldn't touch it again for the rest of the week. He found the transition between subjects
difficult.
And he could just focus on one. That worked for him. And then when he was in university and you're taking, a handful of subjects or whatever, rather than 8 subjects or whatever, that worked for him. He would concentrate one thing at a time. But again, it's always giving it back to them. Okay, this isn't working. What can we do to make it better? What do you think is going to work? Let's try it. And then we'll evaluate. Is it working? Is it not working?
And that's really something that you can do at any age. I mean, as soon as your child's talking, what are you so frustrated about? Like, and of course, in the beginning, they're going to be like, what are you talking about? Or not know how to put it into words, but it's a process, and helping them to start the earlier you can help them to start realizing that they do have a say. It's their life. And yes, we're their parents and we're responsible for them, at least while they're minors. Doesn't mean we have to do it all for them. It doesn't mean that, that like we're the boss, air quotes. So we're not, we are responsible for them, but we're responsible for helping them become responsible adults in the future. And it doesn't mean we're supposed to do it. We're supposed to teach them and model taking ownership of our own life and future and decisions. Yeah. Big lesson. There's a lot of implications for lifetime.
Yeah. This is a topic that is near and dear to my heart because it's kind of the whole philosophy of our homeschooling. But I think we're probably out of time for today.
Yes. Like it. You guys, we can talk about homeschooling all day, every day. But
yeah. So I just want to encourage you, moms, it's a process. It really is a process, but it's also focusing on the end goal. And if you can keep that in mind in those moments of your day, thinking, what's the end goal here? Where do we want this to go? I think that will help direct your paths and what's really important in your homeschooling environment.
I'll put a link. We have a couple of other episodes that we have talked about that really deal with kind of attitude. And that's exactly what Tracey's referring to. And that would help you. So I'll put the links to those in the show notes as well. But all right. Well, thank you. I hope this has been illuminating for you, encouraging, empowering. I hope that this conversation has empowered you too, as homeschool moms and as parents. And we just love being here every week. So we're going to leave you, though, with our closing words that Tracey's going to share with us.
Which is, you can homeschool and it can be really awesome. Enjoy your week.
See you next week.